Welcome everyone to the January 8th, excuse me. It is the 9th. January 9th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We will call the meeting to order now, and if the secretary will please call the roll.
Mr. Yulhorn? Mr. Harless?
Here.
Mr. Browndyke?
Here.
Ms. Bowden?
Here.
Ms. Cliff? Here. Alderman Gibson?
Here.
Ms. Sisson?
Here.
So at this time, I would like to declare the floor open for nominations for chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Madam Alderman, I recommend that we keep our illustrious and capable chairman, Jennifer Sisson.
I second that.
Any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, I will move that the nominations cease and that Ms. Jennifer Sisson be elected. If we could go ahead and...
Okay. Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Clift?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes. And I will therefore turn this over to Chairman Sisson.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will entertain a nomination for vice chairman.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to move that Hunter Browndyke be reelected as vice chair.
Second.
Okay. All right, and I will take a moment if there are any other nominations. But seeing that there have not been any other nominations, I will entertain a motion that the nominations cease and that Hunter Browndyke be elected as vice chairman. So now we need we need a motion to make that. Anyway, let's call the roll.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Clift?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke? Sorry. Ms. Bowden?
Here.
Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. Congratulations, Vice Chairman Browndyke. Now, we are done with that part. We only do that once a year, so hopefully we'll be smoother on the rest of this. Before we get started, I want to make some announcements regarding the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body, and as such, the latitude for acting on applications is somewhat limited by state statute and city ordinance. This meeting is being recorded, and those appearing before the board, as well as the commissioners, I'd like to remind us as well that we need to speak into the microphones if you come and want to speak to the board, and for those who will be appearing before the board, they need to identify themselves, state their address, and then be sworn in. The second announcement I want to make is that all the motions in this meeting will be made in the affirmative. That does not necessarily mean that the person making the motion agrees with the motion, nor that the motion will be approved. That's just the way that we handle motions. They will be affirmative, and then the motion will be voted up or down. At this time, I want to swear in. I want to take a moment and.
Chairman, you were going to move to consider moving to adopt the agenda.
Yes, there was a new agenda presented that simply added the election of officers, which we needed to take care of being at the beginning of the year. So do I have a motion to accept the new agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second. Okay. If you'll call the roll.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Browndyke?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Ms. Clift?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Sisson?
Yes. At this time, I will swear in the staff as they will be presenting their staff reports. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you very much. And then we are going to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was in November. They have been, minutes of those meetings have been circulated among the commission. Do anyone have any amendments, or do I have a motion?
Just move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. If you will call the roll.
Mr. Yulhorn,
Yes.
Mr. Harless,
I recuse myself.
Mr. Browndyke,
Yes.
Ms. Bowden,
Yes.
Ms. Clift,
Yes.
Alderman Gibson,
Yes.
Chairman Sisson.
Yes. And those meeting minutes approved. We'll now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is case number 18801 regarding 7268 Oakville Drive. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chairman. The request before you is for a variance for an accessory structure, specifically a decorative garden structure, to exceed 8 feet in height in the required side and rear yard setbacks in the RT zoning district. The subject property is located in the Vineyards neighborhood, which is right here off of Wolf River Boulevard. And as mentioned, it's located in the RT zoning district. That stands for residential townhome. Those are smaller lots with smaller setbacks. Here you can see an aerial of the subject property and get a feel for how the setbacks are smaller than some of the other lots. This is the subject property right here, and the accessory structure that we're talking about is located right here in the back rear. This is the rear yard of the subject property. The applicant submitted a request for a trellis. After reviewing the application, it was determined that per city ordinances, it could not be defined as a trellis. Per section 6-103C, the city ordinances define a trellis as a frame, usually wood or metal, supporting open lattice work and used as a screen or support for growing vines or plants. A trellis is limited to 8 feet in height. And this is the structure that the applicant constructed and is requesting a variance for. It has some lattice work here, but the upper part does not fall under the city's definition of a trellis, and it is 9 feet 10 inches, so over the height of a trellis. Therefore, it falls under the definition of an accessory structure. Per section 23-333-7B, such structures that may extend into the required rear yard, but should be located at a distance from the rear yard and side lot lines as equal to their height. So if you go back to the site plan here, you can see this is the structure here, the trellis here, and it is built against the fence line, so it is not set back the almost 10 feet from the side property line. From the rear property line, it is probably set back about 20 feet. Per this site plan, the rear property line is here, and the trellis, or the accessory structure, starts right there. So the applicant is asking for a variance for this trellis accessory structure to remain in its current location. It is located in the rear yard. Here's a view from inside the applicant's house where you can see this is their rear yard area. They're asking for the variance for it to remain in its existing location as they have a small usable rear yard setback. The applicant did not apply for a permit through the city when this was constructed. Typically for all trellises, accessory structures, arbors, a permit is required through the City of Germantown's Code Enforcement Division. The applicant did receive approval from their neighborhood association, from their HOA. However, a permit was not secured from the city at that time. I just wanted to show you what was before at this place, at the same location. This was the trellis that used to be in location where the current accessory structure is now located. The accessory structure is located in a 3.5-foot utility easement. You can see the utility easement located here on the survey. A trellis would be allowed, a trellis or a fence would be allowed to be located in the easement per city codes. However, accessory structures are not approved to be in easements. Therefore, if the variance is approved for this accessory structure, first, before securing a permit through the Neighborhood Services Division, the easements would have to be released through the various utilities. I believe that covers all the main points of this request. The applicant is here for questions as well. Yes. It does. Per our ordinance, trellises are limited to 8 feet in height, so it would mean that it would have to be cut down to about right along there, which would be in line with the height of what was there previously. There was one photo that I didn't share with you yet, and this one is the view from the alley. So if you're at the rear of the property looking in, this is the accessory structure right there.
Sarah, questions?
Yes.
Do we have any other variances in the neighborhood?
There aren't any current variance requests. There are other structures which are non-conforming in the neighborhood. I'm going to defer to the neighborhood services manager, Joe Nunes, because his staff went out and did an inventory of the various accessory structures in the neighborhood, and he can shed some light on some of those structures.
Mr. Harris, the staff did go out, there were some structures that I do not have that, the exact addresses in front of me. As I recall, there was a trellis that didn't meet the 8-foot height. It was not permitted at one location. That property owner did come in and get a permit. And then there was a structure that was built prior to 2010, and that structure is being considered grandfathered in under that location.
Thank you.
Yes, and as Mr. Nunes mentioned, 2010 is the cutoff that the city uses when they review non-conforming structures. That's when ordinances changed. So for example, this structure here in the neighboring property you see there, that was built many years ago, way prior to 2010, and we don't have records if there was a variance or not, but at 2010 was when the ordinances were updated with the current definitions of trellises and accessory structures, and therefore anything built after 2010 does need to conform to today's standards.
Sarah, I have a question. When the applicant went before their HOA, was a permit required of the HOA for them to complete their installation?
That I do not know, and we'll have to defer to the applicant for that question.
All right, are there any further questions of staff? Thank you very much. At this time, is the applicant wanting to appear and discuss? You will state your name and your address, please.
My name's Andrew Butis. My address is 1407 Crossview Lane, Carterville, Tennessee.
And if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm the designer at Gurley's Azalea Garden. We were representing the Robertsons. They received a letter in the mail from the city of Germantown stating, along with that they're in violation of the setbacks and whatnot, that that the city supports a community-wide vision that emphasizes safe, family-friendly, aesthetically pleasing neighborhoods. And towards that goal, the city of Germantown has ordinances that help to keep each neighborhood a pleasant place to live and ensure that homes sustain their value. If the goal of the ordinance is indeed this, then we and the Robertsons are on the same page as far as the city of Germantown goes. Having been in business for 55 years, Gurley's has always delivered a quality product to their clients with design and aesthetics in mind. The goal of everything we do is to add continued value to our clients' homes. The Robertsons is a prime example of this goal. The Code of Ordinance defined a trellis as having a frame, usually made of wood or metal, supporting open lattice work and used as a screen or as support for growing vines and plants. This trellis that we've built here checks off all those criteria and should be considered as that. To consider a structure of any kind to be massive is depending on the surroundings. The houses in this subdivision are large, the lots are very small as mentioned before, so we built a structure to scale with their house and outdoor space. It's also important to note that the actual height of the trellis is 9'3" per an on-site measurement. Their trellis in their small backyard is residential landscape architecture at its finest. You won't find many things built like this in the city of this quality. Their trellis is made of stained cedar wood. It was built to scale with the space and to utilize her existing English ivy that you saw in the previous picture and incorporate them into the newly built trellis. Bulky materials were also used to withstand the test of time to avoid twisting and warping and twisting and splitting in the wood. We built this trellis with view sheds, architectural detail, and aesthetics in mind, and everything in this was custom made to achieve a vision. The same letter goes on to say that your cooperation is appreciated and will help protect the value of your investment, as well as the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The trellis was approved by the HOA Architectural Committee. Although we did not pull a permit, and at the time we weren't sure if we needed to because it was a trellis and it was along with the fence, we defined it as a trellis, so we didn't think we had to pull a permit. It does not impede any views from their neighbors. It is not able to be seen from the service road except in one area, which you saw in that picture. And many people would agree that if this trellis wasn't in the backyard, the cohesiveness of the design would be lost. You can see that from the pictures of what was previously in that backyard. I know it would lessen the value of the home if it were changed or modified to show less thought or craftsmanship, as this is the focal point from the inside of their home as well as the outside. It's the first thing you see when you walk through their main hallway into their living room, is that view right there. We ask that you allow the trellis to stay as is and for the height to remain the same for the sake of the design aesthetics and sustained value that it brings to the Robertsons' home as well as their surrounding neighbors. This is, after all, the goal of Germantown as well as ours. That's it.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of, I'm sorry, what's your last name? How do you pronounce it? Butis, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Any questions?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Butis, let me compliment you on a design well thought out and very, very becoming. I mean, it's very attractive.
Thank you very much.
With that said, it doesn't meet the requirements of the Germantown Code, which says a trellis must be 8 feet high. Can I ask you why you didn't?
The reason for the height and the interest of designing it to scale and the fence being 6 feet high, if we designed it only to be 2 feet taller, there wouldn't be as much impact on the space. And as you go up with that beam on top, you also begin to block some of those roof lines coming out of there, looking out of that living room right there. And then the part that you don't see is on the other side, there's a fountain with rafters coming out of the top of it that tie the design into the house itself. So that's what I'm saying with if you take the whole thing down in the rafters, the cohesiveness of the design is completely lost.
But you knew that it was supposed to be 8 feet high?
I did not, no. I did not. The reason I designed it that way is because it's just how we've done it in the past with the shutter design. You can see through it and everything, which is our lattice work. It's just a different way of doing it. And then we put the beam on top with rafters just to make it look kind of more like a trellis. It's finished look and quality.
Other questions?
I was unaware of any height requirement or size requirement as far as the size of the structure itself. Are those 8x8s or 6x6s?
They're 8x8s.
I would have not known as a contractor of over 40 years that a trellis had to be some minimalist scale. Nor would I've known about the height requirement. I just thought that as long as it wasn't on the fence, you could put a partition there of some sort that you could grow vines on. I didn't realize that it had to be a percentage of metal or